Welcome to AP Biology. This video is an overview of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is going to be the process in which solar energy, the energy in sunlight, is converted into chemical energy, the energy found in the chemical bonds of molecules. This chemical energy is then going to be used to fuel the production of ATP within organisms. So photosynthesis is going to nourish the entire living world. It is the process by which sunlight is converted into the chemical energy that all living organisms need to live. Autotrophs are organisms that can make their own food through the process of photosynthesis. Autotrophs include producers like plants, algae. You also have bacteria like cyanobacteria that can also perform photosynthesis. Heterotrophs are consumers. They have to eat other organisms in order to obtain energy. When a heterotroph or a consumer eats another organism, what they are really consuming is the chemical energy produced during the process of photosynthesis. The major organelle that is going to be found within the cells of a producer or an autotroph that is going to be performing the process of photosynthesis is called the chloroplast. Here we're going to concentrate on plants. Leaves are the major location of photosynthesis within plants, and the cells inside of a leaf are referred to as mesophyll cells. There's two types of mesophyll cells. You have palisade parenchyma and you have spongy parenchyma cells. But this mesophyll of the leaf is a location that has cells that are going to perform photosynthesis. So these cells contain chloroplasts inside of them. If you look at the structure of a leaf, on the leaf surface are holes called stomata. These stomata are the holes that are going to allow carbon dioxide to enter and for oxygen to leave. Carbon dioxide is going to be needed for photosynthesis. Oxygen is going to be produced during photosynthesis. As a side note, this stomata is also the location by which water can transpire out of a plant. If we look at one of these cells within the mesophyll, these photosynthetic cells contain chloroplasts. Here you see the structure of a chloroplast. It has a double membrane, and inside you see structures called grana. Each granum is a stack of thylakoids, and these thylakoids contain the photosynthetic pigment called chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is the green pigment that's going to make a plant green, and it's also going to be the pigment responsible for absorbing the energy in sunlight. The fluid outside of the grana is called the stroma, and the stroma is going to play an important role in the second part of photosynthesis, or the second stage of photosynthesis. Here we see the equation for photosynthesis. It's essentially the opposite of cell respiration. We know that cell respiration is a catabolic pathway. Photosynthesis is an anabolic pathway. It is going to build something. In this case, it's going to be building glucose. Glucose is the chemical energy being produced during photosynthesis. The chemical reactions in photosynthesis are endergonic. They need an investment of energy, and that investment is going to come in the form of light, solar energy. But here you see in the equation that carbon dioxide and water are going to form glucose and oxygen. Photosynthesis is going to begin with the splitting of water, a process that we call photolysis. Photo meaning light, lysis meaning splitting. What we're going to see is that water is going to be the source of electrons. Photosynthesis is a redox process just like cell respiration. Remember, in a redox process, one molecule is going to get oxidized, another one is going to get reduced. To be oxidized means that you lose electrons. To be reduced means that you gain electrons. When you gain electrons, you gain the energy that they contain. The major process that's going to happen in photosynthesis is that water is going to get oxidized. When water is split through photolysis, it gets oxidized. It loses its electrons. Ultimately, in the end, the carbon dioxide is going to receive the electrons. It's going to get reduced. And when it gets reduced, it's going to gain the electrons. It's also going to gain hydrogen ions or protons, and it's going to become glucose, the major end product of photosynthesis. Here we see overall what's happening. Water is going to be oxidized, carbon dioxide is going to be reduced. So the electrons are going to ultimately go from water over to carbon dioxide. So you see this water gets oxidized. When it gets oxidized, it loses its electrons. It also loses its protons, and it's going to become oxygen. The carbon dioxide is going to get reduced. It's going to gain electrons, it's going to gain protons, and it is going to become glucose. Now, just like in cell respiration, we're going to see an intermediate found within photosynthesis. The electrons do not directly go from water to carbon dioxide. Instead, the electrons go from water to an electron carrier called NAD. Forgive my handwriting as always. P plus. NADP plus is going to gain the electrons and become NADPH. NADPH is going to serve as the electron carrier, and that NADPH is what's eventually going to bring the electrons over to carbon dioxide to reduce it. There are two main stages in photosynthesis. The first one's called the light reactions. The second stage is called the Calvin cycle, also called the dark reactions. The light reactions are going to take place inside the thylakoids, specifically in the thylakoid membrane. During the light reactions, water is going to be split. When water gets split, we no longer need the oxygen. It's released as a waste product. Two major products are going to be made during the light reactions. One, the electrons that came from water are going to go to NADP+. NADP+ is going to be reduced to NADPH. And this is a really important electron carrier. The other thing that's going to happen is ATP is going to be made. ATP is made through a process called photophosphorylation. In this case, the energy source that's used to regenerate ATP from ADP is going to be light. So light energy is going to be used to make ATP. The second part of photosynthesis is called the Calvin cycle, and that's going to take place inside the stroma. This is where carbon dioxide gets reduced. To reduce carbon dioxide, we're going to use NADPH. ATP, which was made during the light reactions, is going to be used to fuel the Calvin cycle. What's going to happen in the Calvin cycle is that carbon is going to get fixed. It's a process called carbon fixation, where carbon dioxide enters the stroma and gets grabbed onto by an enzyme called rubisco. Once rubisco is able to grab onto the carbon dioxide, the ATP in the NADPH can then be used to reduce it. The immediate product of the Calvin cycle is a molecule called G3P. It's a 3-carbon molecule. For every 2 G3P that are made, 1 glucose can be formed. So here we trace the steps of photosynthesis. We begin with the light reactions which are occurring in the thylakoids. Here we see the two reactants. We have light and we have water. The light's going to split the water. Oxygen is going to be released as a waste product. Those electrons that came from the water are going to go from NADP plus to form NADPH, an electron carrier. During the light reactions, photophosphorylation is going to occur. The energy in sunlight is going to be used to make ATP. We'll see specifically how that's done in the second video. The ATP and the NADPH are the two major products of the light reactions. They're going to leave the thylakoids and travel to the stroma, which is where the Calvin cycle takes place. During the Calvin cycle, carbon's going to enter, carbon fixation takes place, where the enzyme Rubisco grabs onto the carbon dioxide. ATP is going to fuel this Calvin cycle, and NADPH is going to be used to reduce carbon dioxide to make sugar. Right? The immediate sugar made is called G3P, and then G3Ps are used to make glucose. Now this glucose we're talking about here, this is the chemical energy. This is the energy that consumers or heterotrophs are going to use in order to generate ATP, their cell's usable energy source that's going to fuel all cellular work. So when consumers eat an organism, they eat a plant, they eat algae, they eat anything, what they're trying to obtain is this chemical energy produced during the process of photosynthesis. This concludes our video.